Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as the Lost. You can see that this is another special daily that goes to Mom's Food as the Lost, so I'm not too excited from the very start, but I did try to give it my best shot, because I feel like even though these dailies are supposed to be competitive and they're supposed to represent our inner min-maxes and whatnot, sometimes we can have just a little bit of fun, and I feel like this was supposed to be a fun daily. I think it would work great, but maybe what really not ruined it, but maybe made it a little bit less exciting was the Forget Me Now in the very first item room. And the Forget Me Now, while it's a decent item, obviously I would never say no to it on a daily run. That's exactly the problem. You would never say no to it, or in fact, you kind of have to take it because there's really no way for you to take an advantage or at least get a higher score than someone who did. And just because of how obviously it is placed in this run, basically no one will miss it. It's in the very first item room. You're kind of forced to take it if you want to have a good score, because suddenly, even if you do well, even if you do perfectly, you can imagine not a lot of people would actually get the damage penalty, because if someone does get to the end, and they didn't die, which means that there's no way for them to take damage penalty because they have the Holy Mantle. So suddenly now you're kind of facing against all of these players who will have near perfect scores, so it becomes much more min-maxy than usual. So not only do we have to pick up every single consumable, not only do we have to take every single advantage, you also have to take the Forget Me Now and use it in a floor that's most applicable, or at least the one that's the largest to get the maximum benefit. But because this is the Mom's Food Daily at least, you can use the Forget Me Now in any other floor to maybe get another item or maybe another chance of getting something else. And I think I read that someone actually used it in the Caves 1. They got a Dead Cat, which is obviously a great item for the Lost, and then they used it and transformed into Guppy on that same floor. And that's obviously something that's going to give you a much greater advantage, because not only are you going to be able to go faster through the run and faster through the floors, and that will give you more points on average, but also because the sizes are relatively the same, it's really not that much different. Some Caves 1 floors can actually be larger than some Necropolis 2 floors or Depths 2 floors or whatever, and that can maybe give you an advantage in that sense. Not only are you gonna be faster, but you're also gonna get just more exploration bonus because the floor is gonna be larger. So all of those things combined do make it somewhat unpredictable, and there's really no way to know which path is the optimal one. And for that reason, I just say let's try to enjoy the daily for what it is, and let's just try to make wacky decisions. And that's exactly how I approach this daily. I didn't go with the intention of trying to get the best score or whatever. I just went in with the intention to try to survive for as long as possible and have a little bit of fun with it, because if you look at it, this run is actually pretty potent because the damage output is not that bad. We pretty much killed Ragman in 2 or 3 shots. Of course, we did get a bit lucky, so we got Explosivo, we got some Fire Mine shots and they managed to explode and things like that, but also just overall there's a lot of stat modifiers, and because of how these items work, you get a lot of fun synergies which work really well together, and not only that, you're able to deal with enemies pretty much very sufficiently. And of course, maybe we're not having as much luck against Mouse Show, but a lot of fights will kind of devolve down to, are we lucky enough, or at least will we get the stat modifiers or the tier modifiers that we need in order to deal with these enemies as efficiently as possible. And of course, sometimes it's gonna happen, and sometimes it's not really gonna go in our favor, but overall it's still a pretty powerful run, and with the Holy Mantle and things like that, I feel like we're in a pretty good position. So maybe another thing, maybe the saving grace of this run, of course with the random tier modifiers there come all the explosive effects. We have the Fireman shots, we have random explosive shots, we have something that can actually end up hitting us and damaging us, and that can be quite a harsh lesson in variance. But in this particular case, I feel like it's a bit better because we're playing as the Lost, so we have spectral tiers, and then of course we can use the spectral tiers in order to shoot through enemies which are hiding maybe on the other side of the rocks, and that just gives us more safety. At the start, we also got some of the items which I feel like are maybe a bit more defensive and just a bit more applicable and useful in this particular run than any other, and that's of course Safety Pin, which increases your shot speed and your range, which both increase your effective range. And we also got Spider Bite, and Spider Bite is great because it slows enemies down. Well, it's not a guaranteed chance. I feel like this is gonna be one of those runs which is gonna be rather lucky, or even if just maybe slow an enemy once or twice, it's gonna be really useful, especially against enemies which tend to charge a lot, so Gertie Jr., things like that. If you slow them down, they just stop charging, and you essentially get all the benefit of getting the slow while also stopping them in their tracks. Essentially, it works like a stun against those enemies, so for all those reasons, I'm always up for it, because it makes those fight very trivial. And as the Lost, which doesn't have a lot of health, you really need every single advantage that you can take in order to really beat the daily. So I ended up dying on the Caves 1 floor, and what ended up happening was Lust spawned in the room, and first of all he cut off my escape pad, so I really wasn't able to get away with it, but the second time he just accelerated really fast, and I just wasn't able to get away from it. I thought that maybe I was gonna use my Forget Me Now in a dangerous situation as maybe my second chance. So if I was ever in a position where maybe I felt like I was gonna get hit a second time, there's no reason not to do it. I can just use the Forget Me Now to restart the floor and come back with the Holy Mantle and try again. And for all those reasons, I would consider Forget Me Now a pretty useful item to get this early on. But of course, there are some caveats. I don't want to use it in that position necessarily because I really want to save it so I can get the maximum exploration bonus, but at the same time I really want to use it when I feel like it's gonna be applicable and try to actually stay safe. So I really need to use it in a position where I'm gonna be as safe as possible, or at least when I know that I'm gonna get hit for sure. So with that said, I'm just gonna give you that instant replay and I'm gonna shut up for a second.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
So yeah, I don't know what happened. Lost really just accelerated at Mach 10 speed and I just wasn't able to get away from it. It was a bit discouraging to say the least, but you know, this is how these dailies go. There's really no other way to go about them. Sometimes you're gonna end up winning and sometimes you're gonna end up losing. I can't be too mad about what happened, I can't be too upset. It is a lost daily with a lot of variance after all, and sometimes, you know, I've had some good performances and I feel like it's been a time for me to just fail a daily and just be in the like top 55 percentile or whatever. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed it for what it was and I hope to see you next time.